Hello, my name is Dennis Salgado. I'm a research fellow at the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts. And today we are here to interview Marcelo Berti, also known by some as Max Berti, who is a pastor in São Paulo, right?
Yes. I am a church planter in São Paulo. I am the pastor of the Igreja Batista Fonte São Paulo, which is a ministry I've been working with since 2018. Yes, I took my undergrad at Word of Life Brazil, Seminário Bíblico Palavra da Vida for us. It was the school I took my first introduction to Greek, New Testament Greek and textual criticism. Later I did a master's degree, started there as well, but eventually I went to DTS to study and get a little better education on Greek and textual criticism as well.
So Max, tell us, did you grow up in São Paulo? Were you located near to the seminary where you went to?
Actually, I was a missionary kid. My parents worked in the northern Brazil. I lived there for most of my young and teen years. It was a very great experience to shape, I think, my view of ministry and my view of the Bible as well.
And how did you make that transition from northern Brazil to your master's degree in São Paulo and then eventually to DTS? I mean, I can only imagine it was quite an interesting journey.
Oh yes, it was an interesting journey. It was a long journey as well. I think it was about 12. I understood that I had to dedicate my life to ministry. And when I was about 17, I moved to São Paulo to study. And I did not have a good grip of theology at that time. I didn't have a good grip of reading. I think I've read only one book prior to seminary, to undergrad, and it was a very interesting experience to learn that I really like to study and to learn that I really like the Greek language as well. And as I was working through the seminary, one of my professors told me that if I want to work or to study deeper theology or anything in Greek, I should learn English because I could not dig properly without the knowledge of the language. On that day, I picked up a book, St. Augustine Confessions, very easy book to read in English, right? Could understand anything. But that was the moment I decided to learn English. I didn't know how to read in that.
But New Testament textual criticism, that's a little bit too specific, right?
Yes.
I mean, even at the seminary level in the U.S., you're not studying textual criticism that much. I mean, you can pick up a few classes here and there, but it's not a big thing. So what kind of, gave you that interest to study New Testament textual criticism?
Well, there was a few things that happened in my church where I was pastoring at that time. I think one of the most important things for me was a young man approaching me and asking me if I could help him because he was about to lose his faith. He had read a book, and this book shook his core, his faith, and he was asking me for some guidance and help. And the book he was reading was a book I also was reading at the time. In Portuguese, it's O que Jesus disse, o que Jesus não disse, but you probably know as misquoting Jesus, right?
Yes.
This is Bart Ehrman's first book that came to Brazil, and it had a very important impact in the churches especially.
And how was your time at CSCNTM? Did you learn anything new when it came to textual criticism? Did you see artifacts? I mean, people, they're always trying to find those manuscripts. I mean, did you see anything in person?
Well, I think I had the most incredible experience at that time because it was the first time I was actually working with manuscripts. There were manuscript images, right? Mm-hmm. But it was the first time I was really working with them. And there are a few assignments on collations of manuscripts that he gave us.
Comparing manuscripts?
Comparing manuscripts, yes. Transcription of manuscripts as well. At that time,
which means getting the Greek from the manuscript.
Yeah, into our type font, right? And I did some of the transcriptions for P45, P46, and P47. I think was the initial movement toward the transcription of that. I was working with that. But I think I liked the most was my first assignment. My first assignment was, I was just indexing, making indexing manuscripts, right? And I received a few images with the lectionary. I didn't know which kind of lectionary it was, but it was just working through the images. And as soon as I was moving through the images, I saw recto and a verso images of the same manuscript. It was the same page. I was looking to both sides of them. And I could read there was some bleeding through as paper manuscript. So the scribe probably used a lot of ink, so there's some bleeding. But when I looked to the bleeding, it was not the text that was on the other side of the page.
Oh, wow.
So it was a completely different thing. At that time, Jacob Peterson, Dr. Peterson now, he was my supervisor. And I asked him, what's happening here? He said, I have no idea. And he looked at me and said, do you know if this was written by the same scribe? And I never did some paleography studies, right? It was my first assignment. And I said, I don't know, I think I have to check. And he looked at me and said, so next week we have a meeting in Dr. Wallace's house. I want you to bring this manuscript. I want a transcription of both sides and this other text that you're seeing in it. And I want you to tell me if it is the same scribe or not. I have no idea how to do it. So I decided to take the image home. He allowed me to take the image so I could, and take every single letter of the Greek alphabet and using different images in a spreadsheet, right? After this meeting, Dr. Wallace wants to see you. After everybody leaves, you're going to present this for him. And I did. It was very intimidating, have to talk about Greek manuscripts to him. And I remember he looked at me and said, you did a great job, Max. That time, my name was Max already. You did a great job on this. Do you believe this is the same scribe? I said, I actually don't know the answer to this question yet. But if I have to guess, I would say it is the same scribe, but I don't know exactly how it happens. My best guess is probably one of the pages was loose and it was the ink was wet and probably touch a little bit of this, but I would have to see it personally to verify. He said, okay, one day we take you to the place and we can see some manuscripts. And that was my first meeting with Dr. Wallace at CSNTM, working with images of manuscripts and the invitation, informal invitation, of course, of looking to actual manuscripts.
Would you say that CSNTM somehow helped shape some of your views when it comes to the New Testament and the transmission of the text of the New Testament?
Yeah, I think it completely changes the way we look to the book. I think the Bible, I think it becomes more real. I think I have a highest respect now, not only for the text, but for its history. Some people died protecting this book. Some people fought to protect this book. Some people spent their whole lives writing it. And to see this work, to see the result of this work, to touch it, it's to ground in reality what really happened. It's a different respect, it's a different approach, and it changed to my core, my beliefs in the Bible. Not that I have any doubts that it came from God. On contrary, it became more real to me. I could see evidences of God's provisional work in history through fallible man, which for me was amazing. I see scribes making errors of copying, and it's still, I was reading God's book. I was touching a book that was ready for a church in the past.
So seeing those differences did not disturb you, did not drive you to skepticism? Or?
Yeah, no, it happens the other way around. It was to see that scribes are like me. They have rebel fingers as well. They have fingers that makes mistakes. But we can see that they're doing this with incredible care. So yes, there's a letter missing, there's a word missing, there's a sentence that changes its order. Yes. Oh, sometimes they're missing verses. Yes. But they're like us. They're working as us. Every time I type something, that I copy something, every time I do a transcription on a manuscript, I make mistakes. This is why we have several people looking to the same page, the same text, so we can correct each other. And they have something like this. Some correctors would come in the text and say, oh, this is not the right rendering of the text we have. And all of that shows to me so much care and respect for the text that changed the way I see it. For example, every time I open my Bible in Portuguese, I see words that were chosen by someone. Sometimes I would choose different words, but I see that that is the text that team of translators chose for that passage for a reason. They don't want to disturb the text. They're not working against the text. They are trying very hard to make that text intelligible, readable. And I think the scribes did the same thing. So sometimes there are some minor changes, yes. Some intentional as well, yes. But they're not trying to change it in the way you cannot recognize anymore. It's completely different now. No. They are trying to make it easier to read and understand. And I appreciate that, because they are taking the word that would be read in public for a church, so that church could understand. And that changed a lot of my perspective on the text of the New Testament and the appreciation I have for the public reading of the Scripture and the whole history of reading this text in the church.
Do you see the work that we do at CSCNTM impacting generations here in Brazil? How has the work of CSCNTM been helpful to people, across the globe or in South America in this case?
Yeah, that's a very, very important thing for me. 20 years ago, a little bit more than that, I was studying, I had my first class on textual criticism. My professor told me a few things, I think, about manuscripts. I could see on the apparatus some letters like Aleph, B, P45, P75. But nothing of that make any sense to me. If I worked through the library, I could find a picture of one page, a low quality black and white picture of one manuscript. It was sometimes only one side of one page. It was just the front part of it. And that it was all the access we had at that time to a manuscript. If our teacher was to give us, to take us to see an image of a manuscript, a facsimile edition of a manuscript, at that time I believe we have to leave Brazil. I don't recall any seminary that had a facsimile version of any New Testament manuscript. Now imagine 20 years later, when I teach textual criticism every time, my students have access to high quality images, colorful images. They can zoom into every detail of each letter of that manuscript. They can see the kind of instrument was used for that particular manuscript, and they can see it on their computers. They can see it in class as it's happening. I don't have to say, this is Aleph. No. You can open in your computer images of those manuscripts. You can go and see Codex Sinaiticus for yourself. And I can show you places where he made mistakes, that he had excellent readings. And that is completely changing the way we teach textual criticism.
And speaking of teaching and students, are you involved with any other projects right now as a pastor perhaps, but also as a text critic?
Yeah. I was invited to join a project of revision of biblical texts in Brazil. Mm-hmm. New International Version has a version in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese. And I was invited to join that project. And that is completely changing the way we teach textual criticism. And speaking of teaching and students, are you involved with any other projects right now as a pastor perhaps, but also as a text critic?
Yeah.
I was invited to be to join a project of revision of biblical texts in Brazil. We call it NEVE. So last year, we finished the work, the whole work of revision of this text. And the main task I had at that time was to go through most of the textual variants for the New Testament. I personally worked with 352 textual variants in the New Testament text and presented a proposal for the committee so we could work some things with the text in this revision. 33 differences of textual variants were addressed by the committee. It was a very nice and very interesting opportunity to put in practice what it means to be a textual critic working with translation and how this impacts the church. Because now every single footnote that this translation has is in some part a reflection of what CSNTM and other scholars are doing around the world. So every time we are looking for their manuscript evidence for this or for that, all of that is getting to the hands of every single Brazilian in Brazil, every single Christian in Brazil. It is a result of the work you guys as scholars are doing in the United States and elsewhere. But I'm also working with the writing and publication of Introduction to Textual Criticism. And one of the things that this generation can benefit from is the access of images, right? But it is really hard and complicated and very expensive to have all those images printed in a book, right? So we are trying to find a way out of it, right? In a way that can benefit both students and those who hold the copyright for those images, right? So QR codes are very interesting things that we can use, right? So we are planning to add QR codes for every single manuscript that I'm introducing in this text. So instead of the student had one image of one page of one manuscript, they can have access to the whole book and the whole manuscript through CSNTMs, for example. And they would have access, high quality access, right? So imagine a student now in Brazil reading about any manuscript, like a papyri, and their QR code, he can use or she can use and see on the website presented in full quality, full colors, high quality images of those manuscripts. I think this will change a lot the way we teach textual criticism as well.
Well, Marcelo, it's been amazing to hear part of your life story coming from northern Brazil to São Paulo, and then Texas, Dallas, CSNTM, and then coming back to Brazil. Now as someone who has more training in TC, in theology and biblical studies, New Testament, it sounds like you are putting into practice a lot of what you have learned in the past. Working even with an introduction to textual criticism and with the committee of the Portuguese NIV. And we would like to see more of this happening across the globe. And we at CSNTM, our main goal is to digitally preserve manuscripts, but also foster scholarship not only in the US, but across the world as well. And you are an amazing example, a model of this, and we want to continue supporting people like you. Thank you very much for your time, and we hope that you will be successful in your projects.
Thank you very much. It was a great opportunity to be here, and I can tell that we are blessed by the work you guys are doing, and we hope that this continues for long years.
Thank you.